If there's one thing I've learned about women disappearing the moment you drop your guard, it's this. They weren't attracted to your affection. They were addicted to your indifference. You thought giving more would pull her closer, when in reality, it triggered a primal switch inside her that said, "He's safe now. I can stop chasing." You tried to be sincere. You thought she'd appreciate the vulnerability. You thought telling her how much she meant to you would deepen the bond. Instead, silence, distance, maybe even disgust. And the worst part? You didn't just lose her. You lost the version of you that she was obsessed with. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to stop sabotaging yourself with care disguised as need, and how to embody the kind of grounded, ruthless presence that makes her afraid to ever lose you. It's not because women are evil or manipulative, it's because mystery is the engine of female desire. When a man shows up with his entire heart bleeding in his hands, he kills the game. She no longer has to earn his attention. She doesn't need to scan for signals, test for strength, or worry about being replaced. There's no edge anymore. It's gone. Imagine two fighters in a ring. One moves slow and steady, giving away his next move before he throws it. The other, silent, still. You don't know what he's thinking. You just feel the tension, the anticipation. That's how attraction works. Women fall for the man who holds back just enough to keep her guessing. Not because he's fake, but because he's sovereign. You've been conditioned to believe caring is noble. That showing interest means you're a good guy. That making your intentions clear is what real men do. But that's the fantasy. The reality, attraction doesn't operate on fairness. It runs on polarity. And the second you let her feel she's got you wrapped around her finger, you kill the polarity. You text too fast. You compliment too soon. You plan the next date while she's still deciding if she's bored. Then you wonder why she just doesn't feel it anymore. You gave her everything, but you gave it too early, too easily. That's not love. That's insecurity, dressed up as honesty. She didn't ghost because you were vulnerable. She ghosted because your vulnerability wasn't earned. You gave her the final chapter before she read the first one. That's why she vanished. She didn't fall for you because of your attention. She fell for your attention being rare. Scarcity breeds value. When you were a mystery, when your replies came late, when your eyes didn't linger, when you had other things to do, she wondered. She imagined, she invested, and then you gave it all away. The throne, the crown, the keys to the kingdom. She didn't walk away because you weren't enough. She walked away because you gave too much for too little effort. Her attraction to you was never about your words. It was about the tension, the friction between what she felt and what she feared. It was the thrill of not knowing where she stood. That's not cruelty. That's human nature. She doesn't want the man who is desperate to love her. She wants the man whose love feels like a reward she has to earn. But you couldn't hold that line. You cracked. You told her how amazing she was, how you hadn't felt this way in a long time, how you were all in, and in that moment she flinched. Not because the words were wrong, but because the timing killed the chase. She went from hunting you to holding a leash. And no woman fantasizes about walking a man. Your heart meant well. Your logic told you that caring should bring you closer. But attraction isn't logical. It's primal. It's ancient. And in the ancient world, men didn't chase. They conquered. They didn't offer their feelings. They offered their presence. Silent. Stoic. Unapologetically focused on their path. You, on the other hand, made her your path. You made her the prize. You rearranged your schedule, your purpose, your masculinity, just to keep her interested. And that's exactly when she disappeared. Because no woman stays with a man she doesn't admire. And no woman admires a man who puts her on a pedestal. You don't need to be heartless, but you do need to be untouchable. You need to move like a man who knows his attention is sacred, like a man who gives nothing for free, not even his affection. When you care from a place of strength, she feels it. When you care from a place of weakness, she leaves. And every guy who's ever laid in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying her last text, wondering what he did wrong, he already knows. He started caring more than she was ready to deserve. And that was the end of it. She didn't vanish because you opened up. She vanished because you cracked open too soon. She hadn't even earned your loyalty yet, and you were already acting like a man conquered. That energy? It reeks of need, and women have a sixth sense for neediness. It doesn't matter how good-looking you are, how much money you make, or how different you think you are. The moment she senses that your world revolves around her, she's out. She may not even understand it herself. She'll say things like, "I don't know, the spark just faded," or "You're amazing, I'm just not ready for something serious." She'll blame timing. She'll say she's confused, but the truth is, she stopped feeling pulled toward you the moment she realized you were fully available. She didn't need to wonder anymore. And in the absence of wonder, desire dies. You think you're doing the right thing by reassuring her, by being transparent, by putting your feelings out there so she doesn't question them. But what you're really doing is stealing the tension. You're ripping away the suspense that kept her intrigued. You're trying to secure something that only survives in the unknown. The problem isn't that you cared, it's that you wrapped your identity around her response. Every smile, every reply, every plan tied directly to whether or not she was into you that day. You became reactive. You went from being a man to being an emotional puppy. She didn't sign up to babysit your mood swings. She wanted to follow a leader. She wanted to orbit a man who didn't need her approval to feel like himself. Here's the bitter truth. Attraction thrives on distance. Not physical distance, but emotional independence. When a man is fully planted in his mission, when he's unshakable in who he is, women can't help but gravitate toward him. Not because he plays games, but because he doesn't need to. His existence is the game. You became predictable, and in doing so, you became boring. Women aren't turned off by emotion. They're turned off by the lack of contrast. You showed no edge, no restraint, no capability for detachment. And that's what made you forgettable. If you want her to chase, you have to be willing to walk. If you want to hold her attention, you have to show that you're not afraid to lose it. Women vanish not because you cared, but because your caring came from the wrong place. From fear, from scarcity, from the deep down belief that you had to lock it in before she left. But she didn't leave because you didn't do enough. She left because you stopped being the man she was drawn to in the first place. You were magnetic when you had other priorities. When you didn't answer right away, when you showed up sharp, focused, slightly detached, when she wondered who else had your attention. When she couldn't figure out what you were thinking, that's what pulled her in. That tension, that unpredictability, that sense that you could disappear at any moment, and it would barely affect you. Then everything changed. You stopped being the storm and became the shelter. You smothered her with attention. You started over-explaining your feelings. You needed constant reassurance. You wanted her to know you were serious. But in doing so, you lost the frame. Because when a man leads with need, the polarity collapses. A woman will always follow your energy. And the energy of "I care too much" quickly morphs into "I'll do anything not to lose you." That's not love, that's submission. And women don't want to lead. They want to relax into a man who doesn't beg. A man who doesn't need to explain his value. Because it's obvious. A man who can feel deeply, but never loses control. But you did. You made her the mission. She became your goal. And when that happens, the dynamic breaks. Because no high-value woman wants to be your entire world. She wants to earn her place in your world. You stopped moving forward. You started orbiting. You reshaped your schedule, your ambition, your focus around her. She didn't disappear because you weren't enough. She disappeared because you were too available. Let me tell you something she'll never say to your face. Women are addicted to uncertainty, to subtle challenge, to the silent confidence of a man who could walk at any time but doesn't, because he chooses to stay, not because he's afraid to leave. You showed fear, not on purpose, but it came out in the way you texted first. Every time. The way you asked what's wrong. When she pulled back. The way you filled the silence instead of letting her sit with it. And slowly, she began to see you as emotionally fragile. Not the rock she wanted, but the cushion she never asked for. And cushions get tossed aside when the pressure's off. So she left, and now you're here, replaying the timeline. Asking what changed, what you said, what you did. But deep down, You already know you cared too much. Too early. You gave her certainty, and she wasn't ready for it. You took away her reason to wonder, and with that, she vanished. Here's what stings the most. She didn't even leave with a fight. No closure. No conversation. Just a slow fade into silence. The same woman who once texted you good morning every day now barely reacts to your stories. The same girl who once begged for your time now says she's just been busy, and you're left trying to decode the emptiness. It's not that she stopped liking you. It's that she stopped needing to like you. The emotional game ended, and she won. You handed her the trophy before the match even got exciting. She didn't disappear because you made a mistake. She disappeared because you stopped being a mystery. In her mind, the story had reached its climax. She cracked the code. You became emotionally legible, predictable, available, constant. And for a woman driven by emotional tension, that's the death of desire. You weren't bad. You were just done. And here's the part most guys never recover from. You start thinking caring was the problem, so you swing the other way. You go cold, detached. You start copying the alpha nonsense you see online. But it doesn't work, because the solution isn't to become heartless, it's to become unshakable. You need to understand that true power is calm. It doesn't chase. It doesn't flinch. It doesn't confess its love after 3 dates. Power is presence. It's the man who can feel everything, but show only what he chooses. When a woman senses that restraint, she leans in. Not because you're withholding, but because you're in control, and control is intoxicating. Not just to her, but to you. Because when you operate from strength, everything shifts. You don't care if she replies in 5 minutes or 5 hours. You don't spiral when she pulls away. You don't rush to clarify your feelings just to ease your anxiety. You stay grounded, unmoved, centered in your purpose. And suddenly, she's not so distant. She starts testing again. She starts probing, because she feels the shift. She senses that you're not waiting anymore, that you're no longer emotionally kneeling at her feet. This is when she gets curious again. This is when the desire comes back, because you've reclaimed your edge. But here's the truth you need to burn into your blood. You never get her back by caring more. You get her back by caring less, by redirecting that attention into your own life, by becoming the man she thought she had, but never fully understood. You stop chasing. You stop explaining. You stop giving her the comfort of certainty. And in that void, she'll feel something she hasn't felt in a while. Fear of loss. That fear is what reignites attraction. Not love. Not effort. Not vulnerability. That fear of loss is primal. It bypasses logic. It doesn't matter how good you were to her. It doesn't matter how much you made her laugh, how deep your conversations went, or how sweet you were on her worst days. What she remembers, what her body responds to, is how uncertain she felt about you. The butterflies weren't born from your compliments. They were born from the unknown. And when you flipped the script, when you made it obvious she had your heart locked down, those butterflies died. Slowly. Quietly. Until she woke up one morning and felt nothing. That's the part no one tells you. That women don't leave in anger. They leave in emotional silence. They leave when you're still trying, still texting, still hoping. And you feel like a fool because everything in your mind tells you that giving more should have worked. You replay every gesture, every word. You beat yourself up for being too much. But the truth isn't that you were too much. It's that you gave it too soon. You tried to secure something that needed space to breathe. You confused closeness with control. And in doing so, you made her feel like she was already caught. But attraction isn't about being caught. It's about being chased. And no woman chases what's always standing still. So what now? You pull back. Not to manipulate her. Not to win her back, but because you finally understand. You understand that your value isn't in how much you care. It's in how centered you remain when you do. You care, but you don't cling. You love, but you don't plead. You show up, but never at the cost of your dignity. Because the man who keeps her isn't the man who bends. It's the man who leads, who moves through life with purpose, who sees love as an addition, not a necessity, who can look a woman in the eyes and say, I want you, but I don't need you. That's power. That's edge. That's what makes her stay. So stop trying to prove yourself. Stop trying to fix what was never broken. She didn't vanish because you weren't enough. She vanished because you gave her everything before she earned anything. And now you know better. You don't get her back by waiting. You get her back by never needing her again.